At the November 2024 Congressional UAP hearing, a 12-page document was submitted alleging that a secret program, Immaculate Constellation, existed for decades outside the purview of Congress.
A YouTube creator recently received a series of mysterious emails that possessed alleged leaked UFO imagery from an anonymous source claiming to be affiliated with this secret program.
The images were subsequently leaked on Reddit and generated a storm of upvotes, commentary, and intrigue. We looked into these claims and present the uncanny truth.
What did the emails say? Can we verify the source? Is this just an internet troll trying to ride the tailwinds of the recent UAP hearing? This episode is for anyone intrigued by the unexplained, interested in UFOs, or that is simply curious about strange internet mysteries.
I'm your co-host Izzo, joined here by your other co-host Magnum.
And this is the Swerve Podcast. And I'm open-minded, right? Welcome to the Swerve Podcast. They basically acknowledge that these ideas are batshit crazy.
We do deep dives on topics that swerve off the mainstream path in an attempt to understand everything in the universe, one obscure topic at a time. I'm your co-host Izzo.
And I'm your other co-host Magnum. Never mind, I'm just as crazy.
Swerve with us into the unknown as we explore ideas that blur the line between reality and fantasy.
Ideas that will make your brain blast out of your head.
Ideas that are straight up crazy.
It's super swervy.
We seek to present and understand.
Innovation occurs on the fringe, and this is where we choose to begin our search.
That's where I get all my ideas from, so if I support them, I get more ideas.
Come and learn some crazy shit with us.
The Swerve Podcast is a completely self-run, independent podcast. Enjoy your stay.
Hello, and welcome back to another bonus episode of the Swerve Podcast.
What's up, everybody? This is going to be an exciting episode. We have come across some interesting information. We're seeing a lot of traction on Reddit about this leaked UFO footage. But before we get into that, if you're a first-time listener and you're wondering what you've stumbled across, we are the Swerve Podcast, and we do deep research on topics that swerve off the mainstream path and talk about them in an uncensored way that's not boring. So did anybody hear about the Immaculate Constellation project that came out from the UAP hearing and wonder what this was all about? Izzo, were you familiar with this? Obviously, we covered it, but...
Before the UAP hearing, I didn't really know about Immaculate Constellation until Nancy Mace brought it up. So right. Shoutouts to her. But yeah, it kind of just was said and they moved on from it. I was like, wait, what? Just made me wonder what else would be leaked after the UAP hearing. So this started popping off. So glad we're covering it.
Yes. When this came out, Reddit was ablaze with these strange images that allegedly were leaked by an insider from the UFO Secret Immaculate Constellation program. So the question is, can we trust this? Do we know exactly what's going on? And what we're going to do, we're going to break down this whole story for listeners so they don't have to spend hours researching this or watching these strange YouTube videos that are coming up about it. We're going to package it. It's going to be nice and sweet. We're going to get to the bottom of it today. Maybe it's time to hop into the basics of today's episode.
Let's do it.
On Reddit, there was a very popular post that was going around getting a lot of upvotes, and it referenced leaked UFO footage that came from a classified UAP crash retrieval program. There was a series of different images showcasing different types of footage from UAPs that have been seen with IR. And this received thousands of upvotes. I think it broke 8,000 very, very fast. And there was a lot of hubbub again on the internet about this leaked UAP footage. And we have to remember this is coming after the UAP hearing, or somewhat, not quite immediately after, but a couple weeks later. And I can say a few things about this. This UAP footage, it's not really footage. There's no video. It's just a lot of different stills that were emailed to a YouTube content creator. And there's various different types. So what we want to do today is inform the listeners of the claims that were made from this, dive into where this is coming from, and try evaluate the credibility of the source, if that's even at all possible. But before we can get into discussing that, we have to talk a little bit about Immaculate Constellation. We covered the UAP congressional hearing recently on a podcast episode, and one of the most interesting drops that happened on November 13th, 2024, at this UAP hearing, was this classified UAP crash retrieval program called Immaculate Constellation. So as Izzo alluded to, Representative Nancy Mace, she served as the hearing's co-chair. She brought out a 12-page document detailing a classified UAP crash retrieval program known as Immaculate Constellation. This report was brought to Congress by Michael Schellenberger, of all people. Again, I'm still shocked that Michael Schellenberger is involved in this whole UAP thing, but I think it's great. He allegedly has a whistleblower that came forth and told him about this program. Now, allegedly, the executive branch has been overseeing and managing UAP without congressional knowledge, possibly for decades. This is what was coming out at this UAP hearing. Now, notably, I would like to mention, while we're talking about this, Nancy Mace, she mentioned that she was told by unnamed individuals to not mention the program's name in a public setting, and that certain individuals did not want the hearing to even happen at all. But she did, and then she said that she's likely going to be on a list, and then she famously says, "Come at me, bro, I guess." And I thought that was badass. I thought it was cool. We did mention that when we covered the hearing. But this is where this is coming from. So there's this Immaculate Constellation program, and it's coming out. Where this strange email fits into the story, there's a mysterious email. A guy named Strange Mysteries on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel. He posts a series of videos outlining a series of strange emails he receives from someone claiming to be from Immaculate Constellation. So the question is this true? Can we verify this? Or is this just someone coming off the tailwinds of the UAP hearing and being like, oh, I'm part of this and trying to fake something? So we're going to go through those emails in the next section and we'll figure out what's going on. But the main email contains several PDF files. The files are of various bizarre UAP still images taken from military IR systems. I want to emphasize this for listeners. We have a link in the description to the Reddit post so you can see what these photos look like. It is fucking disturbing. And honestly, I'll probably include them in the video we make for this. So if you're watching the video version, you'll see what these look like. They're pretty disturbing. There's a lot of boomerang. There's boomerang shaped, there's star shaped, there's disc shaped, there's these cruciform shaped. And the cruciform shapes are, I don't know, they're just disturbing. I don't know what it is, but just looking at them, they're very weird. And we'll say more about that as we move through this topic. Basically, there's a lot of buzz about this. They were getting passed around on the internet, a lot of people sharing this stuff, and people started pointing out connections between ancient historical depictions of deities and the shape of some of these crafts. So there's even more intrigue and mystery about what's going on. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to highlight the brass tacks of this mysterious email. We're going to go through some of the claims and what was said. And then we're going to go through our own thoughts and theories. But first, let's talk about the email.
We now know from a recent UAP hearing that a classified crash retrieval program called Immaculate Constellation was alleged to exist. Leaked UFO images are now being shared across the internet. Is it possible that a former staff member from the secret program has really come forward? What does the leaked email contain? Or is it possible that we are all just LARPing?
Okay, so how this went down, this content creator on YouTube, Strange Mysteries, he posts 2 YouTube videos on November 22nd and November 24th, 2004, respectively. This is where everything starts to explode, we can say. Before we go through this email, I want to mention, this is a notable fact I want to put out. This Strange Mysteries guy, he has quite the following on YouTube. He's got 1.95 million subs. It's probably higher than that now at the time of recording this. I would like to mention, and this is going to come up later when I give some personal takes, his recent videos, they don't get a lot of coverage for the amount of subscribers he has. His recent posts, they get between 2,000 to 20,000 views. He has almost 2 million subs.
Yeah.
That was peculiar to me because it signals a dying channel. And I looked at his older videos from 7 to 8 years ago, and those videos were in the millions. So I think a lot of the subscriber base came from that wave that he was riding back 7 or 8 years ago when he was releasing these videos that were getting millions and millions of views. So I want to mention that off the hop because I think that's a notable fact that's going to color maybe how we interpret things. I don't know. Now, let's get into this first email. He makes these videos, and the first video is claiming that he received the following email. This is what the subject line read, quote,
"Confidential IR picture set of UAPs from the Legacy program. Please read carefully."
And we're going to go through the entire main text of this email because it's very, very interesting. This is what it said, quote,
"I hope this message finds you well. I am reaching out with information that has been classified and intentionally withheld from the public regarding unidentified aerial phenomena and the ongoing covert operations surrounding them. My decision to reach out to you has not been made lightly, and I am fully aware of the risks. I initially considered other individuals to share this information with, including another creator who expressed interest but was unable to commit due to their other obligations. However, given the sensitive nature of this material and the extreme precautions necessary to protect my identity, I believe you are best suited to handle this information responsibly. Many traditional media outlets would require verification of my identity and credentials. This is not feasible due to the risks involved. These organizations, despite their best intentions, are not equipped to handle the level of secrecy and potential retaliation associated with this information. However, I will tell you that I was part of one of the legacy programs overseen by a parent program. I know that's vague, but unfortunately that's all I can offer at this point. You know I can't say what program or what was the name of this program, right? Well, it was called the Immaculate Constellation Program that you are familiar with now. The images I'm providing have been carefully anonymized. I've ensured that they have been made accessible to hundreds of people within the system. This way, my identity is shielded, making it far less likely that I can be traced as the source for this leak. These images captured through various ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance collection methods show clear evidence of what has been termed orbs and motherships, different shapes operating at various sites of extreme sensitivity. Among the locations featured are our nuclear defense bases, and these objects are clearly surveilling these sites, sometimes within close proximity. While I'm not prepared to discuss the incidents associated with these images further, it's important for you to understand that these files are not available online. I urge you to use any method at your disposal, reverse image searches, analysis by your community, or whatever you need to do to validate these materials and convey their authenticity to your audience. My responsibility here is to ensure the truth is brought to light. How you choose to proceed is up to you, but I hope the evidence I've provided will speak for itself. Sincerely, Redacted. P.S. Kindly keep my email confidential when sharing this with your audience. I may have more to share with you in the future."
And that's the end of the email. A few things, my initial take when I read this, I had several initial takes. And Izzo, we'll see what you think about this, but I do find it interesting that he referred to the UAP as aerial and not anomalous, because I thought UAP stood for unidentified anomalous phenomena, not aerial. So I don't know if that indicates anything. I just thought that was somewhat strange if you're involved in this program that you would reference it incorrectly. Maybe that's a reach on my part, but
just to play devil's advocate, maybe because all these stills are in the sky, maybe just specifying aerial. He thought he was doing something there by, not anomalous because they're in the sky, so they're aerial. But I do see what you're trying to say. I like the point that you're trying to make.
Now, the other thing that immediately came to my mind when I was going through where these images had come from is, why would you reach out to Strange Mysteries, a failing YouTube channel? What? Sorry, I don't want to say a failing. That sounds like I'm being condescending. I'm sure he just puts less effort into it over the years. I don't actually know. So I'm going to redact what I just said. I'm not trying to give this guy shit, but a YouTube channel that is not regularly putting out millions of views as it did in the past, why would you reach out to them if you're trying to distribute your message? This seems to be not the right place to reach out to, given this guy's receiving 2,000 to 20,000 views for his new videos, as opposed to millions. So you're not going to get as much reach if your goal is to disclose these images. And the other thing I can say too, Strange Mysteries, when I was listening to the channel, he's not up to date on the UAP topic. He was some things that were said in the email, he didn't really have a background on. And it was very apparent when he's talking about the topic that was the case. So he's not an expert and he doesn't have a lot of reach. So I'm interested, why would someone from Immaculate Constellation reach out to him with these images? Is that weird to you or just me?
I mean, maybe it was like a longtime listener knows that this guy's going to do as he says by like keeping his information private. But
sure.
Yeah.
Why not Michael Schellenberger?
Because Michael Schellenberger doesn't talk. He says, those are my sources. Well, I don't know, actually.
Well, Michael Schellenberger is the reason we have the 12-page document.
Yeah, I guess.
From his source, right? So it would just be accompanying that document with imagery now. And right, Schellenberger said that his source had access to or knew of thousands of high-res images, right? That came out in the hearing. So it just seems to me like he'd be the perfect person. He's an established journalist. He has his protection methods set up. I'm sure he has secure communication channels and tools he uses.
I mean, he mentioned it in the email. If he goes to these traditional sources, they want to verify his identity, and he can't do that. So he just wants to get his information out.
Sure.
If he went through Michael Schellenberger, he'd have to be like, you know what? This is my ID. These are the projects. And Michael Schellenberger would have to verify that before he would say that he'll take on this evidence or, share with the world what he says, because Michael Schellenberger doesn't want to look like a phony or just bringing out information that isn't credible.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a fair pushback and a fair counterpoint. Again, just going through my initial takes to this email, I was curious as well, why not reach out to Jesse Michaels, who is very up to date on the UAP topic? His channel covers this content very extensively. Why not reach out to him as a YouTuber? Because the audience base would be there. And he's also a YouTuber who he's not going to verify, or he doesn't need to verify these things. I'm assuming he would put this kind of stuff out if you reached out to him. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong. Or someone like James Fox, who does all the documentaries, or someone who previously testified at Congress, like Ryan Graves has a podcast now, or Ross Coulthart. This guy's an established journalist. He came forward with David Grush's story. And I mean, yeah, I guess your counterpoint could apply to all of those. It's just he doesn't want to be verified. And maybe that would be the case for everybody. But it just seemed kind of weird, kind of out of left field to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what listeners think, but that was my initial thought. He says the media organizations are not equipped to handle retaliation. I find that weird because what makes you think that Strange Mysteries is capable of handling retaliation? This is just some guy on the internet. Isn't it to me? So I'm just having some little red flags coming out about this footage. This was just some things I'm thinking, and I'm not trying to make any accusations or allegations. These are just questions that came up immediately from this email. The obvious thing, this is an obvious question that one may wonder, is this some kind of ploy to revive a channel using the recent UAP hearing and orchestrating something? Is this what's happening? I think that's something that can be pointed out. It's not, I think it's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair.
I mean, you bring up some good points. Yeah, it's good to wonder why and question why this particular channel.
Of course. Now, I want to talk about the images in the first email. So in the first email, it was enclosed with a 14-page PDF document. The file was called NRO-Immaculate Constellation UAP_IR-cam-picture-set_research_station_NA-4_003.pdf. That was the file. Most of these images, most of the text and information from the IR pictures is redacted, but the crafts are shown. So you'll see these black bars all over the place on the edges of the images because that is whatever the IR displays, that has been redacted. These images are very crazy. There's a starfish UAP. There's orbs. There's just normal black dot stuff. It just looks like black dots in the sky. And then there's the cross-shaped cruciform things. So it is kind of crazy. But I would say overall, the released imagery, it was kind of unremarkable to me.
Yeah.
It kind of just looked like black stills of things. And I mean, fair enough, if this is correct and this is real and this is all true, obviously that would be very remarkable, but without being able to verify anything, it just looked like, I don't know, it wasn't extremely remarkable.
No, I totally agree with you.
But it was getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this second email. Strange Mysteries, like I said, November 22nd drops. This is a random email he received. Basically within 1 hour, he put out the video and was like, I don't know really what's going on, but I'm going to share this with everybody. November 24th, he puts out a second video describing a second email he receives from the alleged information leaker. The tone of the second email is drastically different from the first email. It was much more lighthearted and just weird, in my opinion. It's a long email, so we're not going to read everything verbatim, but just so listeners can understand what I'm saying, the change in tone between the first and the second, here's an excerpt from the second email. And this is what it said, quote,
"Please share this with your community. Nathan, while reading this, try to pace yourself. We don't want you or your viewers to have a stroke midstream. Just kidding. Thanks in advance, buddy. 1. The ceiling fan UFO. Peak comedy. I'll admit, the ceiling fan comparison gave me a good laugh. Thanks for that. But here's the thing. Last I checked, Home Depot doesn't stock gravity-defying high-altitude thermally anomalous ceiling fans. Let's be real here. Yes, UAP come in all sorts of bizarre shapes, but to chalk this up to a ceiling fan, it's a disservice to the serious analysis for this field. Let's not forget that half of you were ready to canonize the Jellyfish UAP. You know, the one that looks like a melted Imperial probe droid? Just because someone with a name shared it."
So you can see the tone is much different. He is joking around. He's lighthearted, but he also seems to be perturbed that some people from the first video and from the images being released were making fun of one of the UAPs, calling it a ceiling fan.
Yeah.
He's upset. It's very weird. Very weird to me. Now, there are 4 other sections that the source writes about in the email, in addition to what we just read. The first section was the ceiling fan thing, where he's talking about it being peak comedy and being kind of offended by it. The second was why this ceiling fan UAP looking image was included. The third was the cruciform entity. The fourth, why I sent the images. And 5, the road ahead. Now, I'm not going to read these verbatim, but I'm going to go through some of the main points that came up. So in the second, why the ceiling fan UAP looking image was included. The source says that this was included because it was anomalous. It was simply to present the data that they have. He mentions that the images were captured in various ways. There was HUD captures, thermal optics, and FLIR, and not just platforms that were used by the US. He says that other allied intelligence was involved. And some of these images were recent images, but some of them were decades old as well. And then he goes on to say, it's not AI. That's what he says here. So I don't know. We're like hashtag believe all disclosures at this point. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe we should rep that hashtag. But he says it's not AI. He says that this is authentic. Now, going on, in the next part of the email, he talks about the cruciform entity, which was by far the most disturbing image in the whole thing, at least for me. He demonstrates that he has knowledge of how this image resembles historical accounts. He specifically cites the Nuremberg celestial phenomena and the Guildford, Surrey incident, which we're going to talk about in a little bit later. He says that there are multiple documented shapes of this form, but the behavior suggests it is beyond our technological capabilities. In the 4th section, where he's addressing why he sent the images, he says it was a test to gauge how the public responds. He says that some passed, but others didn't critically engage enough. He references the ceiling fan commentary again. So again, he appears butthurt by the ceiling fan jokes that were being made. He says that these comments undermine the seriousness of this. No one is serious enough. This is what's coming out. I'm not saying this verbatim. I'm just paraphrasing here. And then in the final section, the road ahead, he says that he will not be continuing the process. He wanted to release higher definition stuff, more compelling evidence, but he's not going to do it now. Hashtag mad. I don't know. I mean, it kind of seems weird to me. He references the ceiling fan commentary again in this section, and he says that disclosure is a privilege, and he makes a comment that evangelicals will label the entities as demonic. And this is kind of me, again, this is just me paraphrasing, this isn't verbatim, but I found it weird multiple times, referencing the jokes that were made about a ceiling fan. I don't know. What do you think about that? That was kind of weird.
Yeah, it does seem like that.
The email chain gets weird as well. So they start going back and forth, emailing just kind of one-ofs. And Skunkworks is referenced in separate emails that the source sends later. Okay, so the source says that one of the images may be from Skunkworks, but is not sure. And I should say to listeners who aren't familiar with Skunkworks, this is a pseudonym for Lockheed Martin's advanced development programs. He says there might be something from that, but he's not sure. So my first thought was, well, does this indicate that some of the UAP, if this is real, are they derived from humans then? Now, what's also interesting, the source then emails back to Strange Mysteries, whose name is Nathan, by the way. That's why he refers to him as that in the email, to blur out the Skunkworks UAP. So we don't even see this in the imagery. This is one of the blurred out versions that we don't have access to.
Yeah.
Strange Mysteries, he does blur this out when he's putting in the video because it was requested, but we can see the emails they were talking about. Strange Mysteries says some look man-made, and the source responds that one is from Skunkworks now. So now he's referring to saying that it is from Skunkworks, one of them, instead of it just might be earlier in the email chain. And I found that very weird.
Yeah. Inconsistencies.
An inconsistency, yeah. He's like, oh, it might be. And then further on in the email chain, now all of a sudden, maybe one is. Like it's a definite statement. I found that kind of weird in the email chain. And then I also found it weird. Again, they're messaging back and forth. All of a sudden, the source changes his mind. He tells Strange Mysteries to initiate a full shutdown now and says that he or she does not authorize the release of any of this in any form. And then he apologizes and thanks Strange Mysteries. So at some point, flips and is like, no, I don't want any of this. He said he can still provide context, but must ensure the images are obscured. He references the ceiling fan comments again. Clearly, he's having second thoughts. And then he seems like he was spooked or something and says that premature disclosure could endanger lives and people making claims about ceiling fans do not deserve access. He also makes mention that the cruciform flyby can remain, the Tic Tac can remain, the cube can remain, and the other boomerangs and the chandelier UAP images, those can remain. But it was just very weird.
Yeah. Does the chandelier go with the ceiling fan?
I think that's what people were calling the ceiling fan, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny.
I've been calling it a cruciform, but maybe I'm referring to it wrong. Maybe it's the chandelier that's the most disturbing. That's what I mean to say. That's the one that's the spiky thing. That's fucked up.
Yeah.
So I'll call it a chandelier. I won't call it a ceiling fan. In the second email, there's a boomerang UAP, a Tic Tac, a flying cross that's alleged to be from the 1967 incident in the UK. There's a triangle UAP, another boomerang, a cube UAP, a cruciform flyby, and a chandelier UAP. Some things are redacted. The close-up of the UAP firing its engines are redacted. The cruciform entity is redacted. And then there's a frame from drone footage of a downed ARV retrieval mission that's redacted. And then allegedly there's an HD close-up of a mothership with some sort of open bay door, and that's also redacted. So we only have access to the images that I said before. What I found interesting, if I'm going to give some quick takes on what was going on here, I just sensed a defensiveness towards people being skeptical, and that's felt strange to me because we should be extremely skeptical. This is an alleged whistleblower dumping leaked images from a very secret program. Like, what do you think? Of course, everyone's going to be skeptical. And no one's just going to be in open arms taking everything at face value. Shouldn't we want the public to be skeptical? Like, shouldn't we critically evaluate things? Now, he sent the images and then he emphasized the images. And then he said to redact certain images. So I also found that very weird. I was wondering if that was some way to gauge compliance, just to establish trust, perhaps, with Strange Mysteries.
Potentially.
And then the source initially says the one with engines may be from Skunkworks, but then later in the email chain indicates that it is from Skunkworks. So I also found that inconsistency weird. And I also, interestingly, this is all sent through Gmail. So I was like... How secure is Gmail? I'm sure it's decently secure, but Google has all this. So like these redacted images and stuff, Google has a record of all of that on their servers.
That's true. But how else would you communicate it with Strange Mysteries?
I don't know.
So
maybe send an initial email being like, hey, here's my secure channel. I don't know. I'm sure Signal used to be used. I've heard there's breaches with Signal, but something like that, or just PGP, right? Like encrypted public, like private public key.
Yeah. Okay.
emails, people like kind of how Circada 3301 communicated.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just like, okay, right? Because if you're putting those images out and now you're trying to redact them, you don't really have control now of what Google does in the event something comes up. I don't know. I just thought that was also interesting. More up to date, more recently, there's been a live stream of this, and there's been a few further emails. We're not going to cover this very in depth, but after these first emails that were leaked, Strange Mysteries put out a live stream and collected a lot of questions and then formatted the questions and sent them to the alleged leaker to answer. Sometime after this, the alleged leaker does respond to the questions, answering the questions and providing even more images. In this email, some of the images are actually colored. They're very weird looking, and there's some more cruciform shapes as well. And I just found this funny. The leaker calls out Jeremy Corbell, like by name, calls him out just for being... Jeremy Corbell's the guy who produced the Bob Lazar documentary.
Okay.
That was pretty famous. He's put out a lot of other alleged UAP videos. Specifically, one of the more famous ones is the Jellyfish UFO or UAP that was flying over the base. Corbell put that out. So he calls him out for being reckless, basically. I found that very interesting. Everybody shits on Corbell. Poor Corbell. For the sake of time, we're not going to go through all these questions that he answered, but there's probably like over 20 that he did provide answers to. I just wanted to mention that because this is the latest. And then also one thing, on the final update video where Strange Mysteries is going through the leaker's responses to the questions, Strange Mysteries ends the video pitching a Patreon. So we'll leave that maybe for final thoughts. Now, to summarize, I thought this was a cool turn of events. Will these turn out to be verified by institutions like the Pentagon in the future? What I mean by that when I say that, the Tic Tac video that was released in 2017, that was the New York Times did a story on, and that the Pentagon verified as authentic, that was actually released much earlier than that on a forum, and then later was confirmed. So at the time, people were like, oh, this is fake, this isn't authentic. And then little do we know, later it does become authentic. So is this just a case of that? Is this authentic? We can't verify it now, but maybe in the future things do get verified. We summarized the email exchange, but can we get any further insights from these communications? Let's go through this in the next section. One quick thing. Are you tired of eating bland flavors day in and day out?
Yes, I need this hell to end now.
Then you should try Flavors of the Forest Bigfoot Breath, a premium raw freeze-dried garlic dust.
Enjoy the health benefits and flavor of raw garlic. They freeze-dry the highest quality ingredients to capture the flavor you won't find in stores.
It's one of a kind, like Bigfoot.
Thank goodness for Bigfoot garlic dust. I thought I was a goner.
If this sounds interesting to you, you can check them out using the link in our description or go to flavorsforest.com/swerve.
We do receive a small kickback from purchases through our link at no cost to you, so it's a great way to support the show if you choose to do so.
That's flavorsforest.com/swerve. Use promo code SWERVE for 15% off. flavorsforest.com/swerve for 15% off.
What about the historical events referenced in the email? Has anyone done a preliminary analysis of the images? Let us examine some of the events and claims referenced in the emails and see if we can develop any further insights.
So he mentioned, I brought this up, the Nuremberg celestial phenomenon. I found this interesting. I wanted to look into it. Izzo, are you familiar with this?
I've seen it before, but not like completely familiar with it.
Okay, this is pretty nuts. So I just want to give listeners some context on some things that are referenced in this email chain because it'll color the entire scenario that we're describing. So in April 1561, so this is a historical UAP event over Nuremberg, a free imperial city of the Holy Roman Empire, there's a series of celestial phenomenon that occurred. Some claim that the descriptions and imagery printed in a news notice that same month resemble what may be described as UAP today. Others claim the descriptions resemble strange atmospheric phenomena like sundogs. Have you seen a sundog before, Izzo?
No, I haven't.
Oh, dude, it's crazy. Sundogs are insane. I was driving one time on the highway during the winter with my girlfriend and I saw a sundog. I had no idea what it was. At the time, I was reading the 3-body problem, which talks about 3 suns, Trisolaris. and I see like 3 suns in the air. And I'm like, why the fuck is there 3 suns? And I had just read that book, and I was like, in my brain, I was like, what is happening? Are we being taken over? Is everything I knew fake? I'm seeing 3 suns.
Immediately after you read the book, that would be some simulation theory confirmed.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There. I'm like, this is a fucking simulation. So then I take photos of it, and I obviously look it up when I get to an internet connection, and it's just like a natural phenomenon that can happen in the sky. It's a certain level of moisture, and especially in the winter when there's like ice crystals, the sun reflects off those ice crystals, and it looks like there's 3 suns. So some people were like, oh, is this just a sundog phenomenon? I'll digress from my personal story and get back to the Nuremberg thing. But some people allege perhaps it was just a natural thing. But this news notice, this was written and illustrated by a guy named Hans Glaser. And this paper, this news notice, is actually archived in Zurich, Switzerland. So this, from April 1561, they have the original news thing that came out. And according to this document, the incident occurred at dawn, and it has multiple witnesses. And the picture of it is insane. I'll probably include that in the video version, just like some stills of it. But let's read it because it's pretty fucking wild. This is what the news notice said. Quote,
"At first there appeared in the middle of the sun 2 blood-red semicircular arcs, just like the moon in its last quarter. And in the sun, above and below, and on both sides, the color was blood. There stood a round ball of partly dull, partly black, fairest color. Likewise there stood on both sides, and as a torus about the sun, such blood-red ones, and the other balls in large number, about 3 in line and 4 in a square, also some alone. In between these globes there were visible a few blood-red crosses, between which there were blood-red strips, becoming thicker to the rear, and in the front malleable like the rods of reed grass, which were intermingled among them 2 big rods, one on the right, the other to the left, and within the small and big rods there were 3, also 4, and more globes. These all started to fight among themselves, so that the globes which were first in the sun flew out to the ones standing on both sides. Thereafter, the globes standing outside the sun, in the small and large rods, flew into the sun. Besides, the globes flew back and forth among themselves and fought vehemently with each other over an hour. And when the conflict in and again out of the sun was most intense, they became fatigued to such an extent that they all, as said above, fell from the sun down upon the earth as if they all burned. And they then wasted away on the earth with immense smoke. After all this, there was something like a black spear, very long and thick, sighted. The shaft pointed to the east, the point pointed west. Whatever such signs mean, God alone knows."
Pretty wild shit. You quite literally have crashed UAP being referenced in this news notice, and a big black long shaft in the sky. I don't know what's going on there. Pretty wild shit. Pretty wild for an old time thing. So this is actually referenced in the email. This is what he's referring to, a very wild incident. Now, the OP or the source also mentions Guildford, the Guildford, Surrey incident. I couldn't find anything about this. He references that there was a cruciform shaped UFO UAP associated with Guildford, Surrey. Was this a slip up? Perhaps, because I couldn't find anything, or was this intentional, or was I just not looking hard enough? Maybe I just couldn't find it. But I wanted to mention that I could find the Nuremberg thing. I could not find the Surrey thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, we did mention the 1967 flying cross. This was one of the leaked images that in the PDF file, the title says the 1967 flying cross from the UK. I looked into that. And also Strange Mysteries did put out a video about this. To give the long story short, this is an interesting case because if this imagery is true, I think the case is actually supported, at least reported about. Maybe not supported is maybe not the right word. Strange Mystery says that he was contacted by someone that pointed out several sources that referenced a similar shaped craft as this 1967 craft that was in the email. The image provided by the source appeared to match the depictions of the 1967 Angus Brooks UFO sighting. This sighting was referenced in the book UFO Drawings from the National Archives by David Clark, and also in Flying Saucers Review in 1968. So this guy emails Strange Mysteries and is like, hey, I know about this case. I think it was written about in these books, and it reminds me of what I read in these books. And he was so shocked by this, he even says in the email, he almost spilled his milk.
It's funny.
So,
He's just, I mean, there's nothing wrong with adults drinking glasses of milk.
It reminds me of South Park, where you just a bunch of milk comes out of your nose when you laugh. And he's like, guys, you know how milk just comes out of your nose when you laugh? And they're like, don't you have to be drinking milk? He's like, nah. And he's just, milk's flying out of his nose. I kind of picture that, just some old UK British man, just milk flying out of his nose all over the table and wrecking the house. Milk flew out of my fucking nose. That's what goes to my head. Anyways, this was interesting. This guy's like, I think it was this case. So does this provide some kind of corroboration, at least some loose corroboration, or did the source already know about these descriptions and just use those descriptions to render the image? You can't really say which is the case, but I thought that was interesting. Someone did reach out and was like, hey, I kind of recognize that one. Now, noteworthy, going on a quick little tangent here, because this was interesting. Did you know that there was actually 3 flying crosses observed in the UK within 3 days of one another? It wasn't just the Angus Brooks case. There's 2 other ones.
I did not know that.
Very interesting. I looked into this. October 24th, 1967, you had the Devon Flying Cross UFO. This had 3 witnesses. October 25th, 1967, you had the Sussex Flying Cross. This was witnessed by policemen in 5 police cars across East Sussex. They reported a bright flying cross in the early hours. And there was another sighting later that same day that was reported from the wing commander Eric Cox, describing a fiery cross. And then finally, October 26th, 1967, 54-year-old Mr. Angus Brooks was walking at 11:25 on Mones Down near Halsworth, close to the Dorset coast with his 2 dogs. He sees a circular translucent craft with a girder at the front and 3 pointing to the rear. The girders rearranged to form a cross shape around the central 25-foot diameter disc and then began to spin. 22 minutes later, the girder returned to their original position and the craft sped off.
Interesting.
So that's what's being referenced. They think maybe they have an actual image of that, perhaps in the leak.
Yeah.
Now, I also just wanted to quickly mention the jellyfish reference. This comes up in the email, and this was released by Jeremy Corbell. This is footage of a purported UFO that resembles a jellyfish that was released by journalist Jeremy Corbell. The object was filmed over a joint operations base in Iraq in 2018, and it is officially classified as a UAP by the Pentagon, according to Corbell. And the object moves across the base. Then the object performs a controlled descent and submerges in the water and then reemerges and disappears at a high rate. That's what the jellyfish thing is. What I would like to say next, there are some people on Reddit who have done preliminary analyses of the photos, at least as good as you can, I suppose. This guy named KCIMC, he's on Reddit. He made a post and he spent some time analyzing the images, and he reported the following. He claims to have a background working with digital media and computer vision for over 15 years, including experience with infrared and thermal cameras, and he makes some notable claims. So the TLDR, there's some images that are clearly near infrared. That's what the OP says. And there are others that are clearly thermal imagery, such as the hazy boomerang and the ceiling fan. This is what he says. When he looked at the surfaces of some of these IR images, he says that some of them are glossy, they have a shiny appearance, and others are more matte-like. For instance, the chandelier in the third photo. Now, he also does talk about, he believes these images are not the original, that they're not perfectly aligned in the original PDF. So this indicates that they were probably scanned from a printout. He also references some military dissimilarities. So the reticles have many different shapes and patterns, and there's some colored reticles, while others are black or white. And then some reticules are crosshairs of various sizes, sometimes with a central box or circle. often with 4 lines at a distance from the cross, sometimes with a tracking box. He says that to him, the black square is the only one that looks similar to reticles he's seen before. And there are 2 compilations showing US military drone footage. He says that he didn't see any clear matches to other reticles.
Okay.
So that was one thing, part of his analysis. The other thing, there's high altitude indications. He says that some of the clouds are legible as hazy high altitude cirrus clouds. These clouds are not necessarily in front or behind the craft, but I guess this type of cloud would be high altitude. So there's some indication that at least some of the photos that have those clouds might be high altitude. He points out some symmetry and asymmetries as well. He says there's lots of slight asymmetries in the imagery, but also lots of alignment. The chandelier is almost perfectly aligned with the sensor. The cube is almost perfectly aligned. The chandelier also appears to have an asymmetry with the 2 main arms pointing in a different direction than the 3 other main arms. And the very strange photo number 11, which has the fuzzy saucer shape or squashed iron cross shape with the circle in the middle of the reticule, it is aligned with the camera sensor and almost perfectly symmetrical on both axes. He does make some references about AI or trying to fake these, and he says that he has some experience making computer-generated visuals, and in his opinion, none of these images are difficult to reproduce. So it could be faked, is what he's saying. And he thinks that because there's significant variety, if this was a hoax, it would have to be made very carefully. And then he goes on to describe how he would fake these images. And he actually believes it would be easier to fake with real hardware and edits and not using AI generation. But he's not against that idea. So this was his initial take. And this was a very upvoted post as well after these images were distributed on Reddit.
Yeah.
So I think with that, should we hop into final thoughts?
Yeah, let's do it. I think the most important thing is just to be skeptical. I like how you pointed out some of the skepticism that you had throughout the emails and how the source kind of changes his tone and his messaging and kind of changes his mind on things. So I think that's very important to consider in this. Yes, this post was trending and a lot of people looked at it, but you got to remain skeptical and not just blindly accept it like the source wanted people to do.
I agree. For me, I kind of think, what are we in, UAP winter here or something? There's so much stuff coming out after this hearing. There's more stuff in the UK we could have talked about too. There's all these strange images and photos. What's going on? I think we're just going to see a lot of stuff. I think whether or not this is verifiable or real or fake or a hoax, it's bringing attention to the subject. I'm going to say personally, I don't really buy the footage at this point in time. As we went through the topic, you can see there's some things that don't quite add up for me. But, if there's new info that arises, I would change that opinion. I don't know. I want to emphasize as well, like I said earlier, that Tic Tac footage, Commander Fravor, that was originally leaked and presented on a forum. And it wasn't written professionally either. It was written, but it wasn't very structured. And that was later confirmed to be an authentic thing. So it was leaked early. So this could be an example of something similar to that. I don't know. One thing I will say, the biggest swerve for me is that fucking Chandelier UAP. That's fucked if that's real. I don't know what it is about that. I don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, none of the images really sparked that emotion, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know what that says, but yeah, I would say the biggest swerve for me was, I don't know.
That's fine. That's fine. I will say, I want to end. I like this comment I found on YouTube, and I think maybe it encapsulates the sentiment I have, at least right now, about this topic that we just covered. This is what the comment said, quote, "I already risked going to prison by sending classified material to a YouTube streamer, but I'm going to stop short of offering any irrefutable proof because of mean comments. Sounds legit," end quote. I mean
for people that aren't used to mean comments or being on the internet, then totally understandable. But for somebody to come out with this information and want it leaked, yeah, not something they should care about, really.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Like, why does he have to be the gatekeeper of this? It's like, you're not worthy enough to see more images. So
yeah,
it's kind of odd.
It was kind of odd. Listeners, let us know what you thought about this topic. I thought it was an interesting little story. We wanted to put it out. It was fun to get into.
Yeah, and just before we roll out of the episode, we do want to mention that we do have a Patreon, and we have 3 paid tiers there. So a $1 Ride the Wave tier, where we drop 1 extra Patreon exclusive episode each month, plus give you shout outs on the podcast. For $3 a month, you can join the Slap the Ass tier, where you get early access on Sundays instead of Wednesdays to all the main topic episodes ad free. You will also get a Patreon exclusive holographic sticker pack exclusively for that tier. And lastly, we have a $10 producer tier, where you will be credited at the end of all main topic episodes, as well as receive 1 monthly special bonus Patreon exclusive episode, in addition to all the other perks as well. Make sure to go on patreon.com/theswerve and sign up. We also do have a free tier there for you to join as well.
Yeah, if you'd like to support the show, that's how you can do it. It's the easiest way to support. If you enjoyed what you heard today, if you've been enjoying the podcast for a bit, you can sauce us a buck. You get some bonus episodes. It's good shit. I will also say, if you like this episode, we did cover the recent UAP hearing recently, trying to answer the question, are there aliens in the ocean, and where that came from. We have a topic on that. And we also did cover the UAP hearing from 2023. That was a lot of fun. So if you're interested in that stuff, you can find that on our feed. And before we roll out of the episode, as always, we would like to give massive props and credits to our producer tier on Patreon. Thank you to David Cheesem, Shelly Terry, SF Baby Doll, Big Ball Small Wiener, Batcat Meatloaf, Velcro Shoe Guy, Tosh Collins and the Future Anglers of Indian Lake, Ohio, Honest Elliott, Max Baseman Yad Johnson, Andrew Johnson, and Christian J for enabling today's episode and the continued growth of the show. And with that, I hope everybody enjoyed today's episode. Thanks everybody for listening. Slap that ass
and ride the wave. That is so hard to read. Jesus Christ. Balls, globes, squares. God damn it. I feel like that made no sense.